From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
As trade tensions rise, uncertainty in the future rolls across farm country. Is there a stopgap option for produce growers impacted by tariffs? In agribusiness, drilling into energy markets.
Us, Russia, and Saudis are your big three players in oil now. We produce just as much as Russia and the Saudis.
How much did that holiday cookout cost? And teaching kids life lessons with a trip to the garden.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Even as trade tensions loom, ag producers were more optimistic in June. That's according to the latest Purdue CME Ag Economy Barometer. The nationwide survey of 400 ag producers saw the index rise to 143 in June. That's just a couple of points higher than May. Much of that gain driven by a positive outlook on current conditions. The strength of the barometer surprising researchers as June witnessed soybean prices fall 15%, trading this week to their lowest point in a decade. A recent Wall Street Journal article says the total value of this year's U.S. corn, soybean, and wheat crops fell $13 billion in June.
The increase in the barometer was driven primarily by an improvement in the current conditions index. That index rose from 132 in May to 138 in June. And we think that was probably driven by a couple of factors. One was the fact that until very late May, producers were able to sell corn and soybeans at reasonably good prices. In the case of soybeans, near $10 a bushel. In the case of corn, $4 a bushel. That gave people some reason for optimism until the late May, early June timeframe. And the second thing was the improvement in crop growing conditions that took place in June.
Minchard says they did see a rise in uncertainty this month. One of the questions asked to producers is whether they expect good times, bad times, or are they neutral for agriculture in the year ahead. He says the percent of respondents in the neutral category doubled in the last month. It's not just the Ag Economy Barometer pointing at trade's impact. The latest CoBank Quarterly Economic Outlook showing 70% of U.S. ag exports are to destinations currently negotiating or in a trade dispute with the U.S. CoBank authors say the shift from trade war rhetoric to reality tempers the optimism felt in the first quarter, adding that aside from potentially losing market share, shakeups in supply chain commitments could allow competitors to build new trade relationships. And it's not just here at home. CoBank says trade concerns pose the single greatest risk to projected global economic growth of 3 to 4%. According to Washington correspondent Jim Wiesmeyer, U.S. trade negotiations continue with China. U.S. tariffs of $34 billion of Chinese goods are set to go into effect this Friday. Beijing says it will match U.S. tariffs in value. Now, earlier in the week, leaked documents to the China Digital Times details China's plan to target President Trump's voting bloc. The documents say China is using targeted tariffs to split apart different domestic groups in the U.S. Wiesmeyer and others have suspected that strategy from the start. President Trump won 8 of the top 10 soybean-producing states. Meanwhile, not just markets, but USDA forecasts will begin factoring tariffs into their long-term outlook. USDA economist Rob Johansson telling Reuters tariffs from China and Mexico will be factored into USDA's global supply-demand report next month. The crop report forecast will assume that these tariffs will hold for the rest of the year. Johansson believes it could impact USDA's estimates for ag exports and global use. Meanwhile, following presidential elections, Mexico's new NAFTA negotiator sees momentum rising for negotiations. Now, according again to Reuters, incoming chief negotiator Jesus Seave says we are basically supporting what Mexico has been putting forward. He says he has ideas on how to improve the deal for the U.S. without hurting Mexico. However, he did not provide any details. NAFTA negotiators said this month they expect negotiations to resume following Mexico's elections. With tariffs from Mexico and China looming, the produce industry is searching for ideas to mitigate the situation and help its growers being targeted by retaliation. Betsy Gibbon has a story.
Trade tensions have been on a razor's edge since the start of the year, fueled by trade deficits, NAFTA negotiations, intellectual property rights, and the steel and aluminum tariffs.
We will take whatever steps are necessary to protect American industry and workers from unfair foreign trading practices.
Countries are fighting back, and it's not just grains feeling it. China also holding U.S. produce idle at its ports during May.
I think the movement itself at the border in China is improved, but if that will change in the future, it's hard to say.
Both Mexico and China have retaliatory tariffs on U.S. products, including tariffs on some U.S. produce, and more may be on the way.
U.S. produce generally is a pretty high value, high quality product, but that will be probably too much to overcome for most of them.
It comes down to one simple philosophy. The best humanitarian policy is to feed the world is free trade.
Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue weighing in on a timeline. He's promising farmers relief, but is quiet on plans.
Most farmers would love to have this resolution by July 7th, and that's all of our goal. So whether that happens or not, farmers are going to be the victims if it doesn't happen.
Some of the industry, especially the grain groups, are looking at the Commodity Credit Corporation Charter Act, CCC, for potential relief.
Whatever they would possibly announce probably wouldn't be enough. And how many crops and how many of the livestock sector will they have to do? I will tell you this, they do not want to implement it.
The produce industry has a growing menu of options the administration could adopt. The administration has the option to place more money into programs. The Emerging Markets Program, focusing on consumers. The Technical Assistance for Specialty Crops, which focuses on phytosanitary solutions. Reducing crop insurance premiums, which some groups strive for a reduced premium during a tough year. Or increasing money to the Market Access Program. The government could fund trade groups in the U.S. to spend money in emerging markets to potentially add or replace export markets.
Market access program would be one thing that would be a solution. I think it hasn't really hit how much it's going to affect it. And I think they're still optimistic that maybe the terms will change.
Is to make sure that the growers' net revenue per acre remains consistent this coming season as it has been in the past few years. So if we can create revenue from other sources, that's positive.
Johnson saying while the tariffs have implications, some industries may not feel a burden until the fall if the tariffs continue.
The tree fruit, like apples and pears, get harvested in the fall, and that's when they would really ramp up their exports. So that's still a few months away, so I think they're optimistic that something might change by then.
Reporting for AgDay, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
All right, thanks, Betsy. Nelson says another relief option could be offering to reduce growers' expenses, such as allowing water to be purchased at a lower price. With a check around farm country, Mike Hoffman joins us this morning for today's crop comments. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Clinton. We're starting off in dusty Smyrna, Texas. Rowdy Boland says, here comes the dirt again. The site is getting old, he says. The dirt has been blowing when a storm rolls in or a storm dies, either one. Boland says the area continues to be very dry. However, he was fortunate enough to receive a ½ inch of rain earlier in the week. And Lauren Turley over in Union County, Kentucky, sending us an update on wheat harvest. She says Kentucky is not included in the USDA crop progress report since it isn't one of the top producing states. However, 51% of the winter wheat has been harvested in the top 18 producing states. And taking a look at the root zone moisture, you can see some of those wet areas across the north central plains. We'll take a closer look at this coming up in a few minutes and have your forecast. But first, here are some hometown temps.
Plan for the unexpected with weather forecast updates. Local forecasts are delivered right to your cell phone each morning, making planning a little bit easier. Just text Weather 6 to 31313 to get started.
Oil prices have been creeping higher lately, and that's taking a bite out of family budgets. We'll talk energy markets next at the Agribusiness Desk. And later, being a master gardener doesn't have an age threshold. We're off to soak up some Tennessee sun today on In the Country.
Ag Day, brought to you by new Delaro fungicide for corn and soybeans. Achieve personal best yields.
The markets were closed yesterday. Let's see how they fared during Tuesday's short day at the CME in Chicago.
On follow-through China trade tariffs coming up here on Friday, the soybean market probably has more downside to see, but the corn market maybe have already priced in a record type yield. Second factor that might come into play, if you do have a high yield for soybeans this year, maybe up near a record high yield, you'll clearly have record high U.S. ending stocks and record high world ending stocks for soybeans. In general, corn looks cheap, and the market might be in a position where it has already priced in a record type yield. Very rare that you have above trendline yields in a year where you have above normal temperatures during the month of July. That's something to keep in mind. Beef prices have already dropped $6 to $7 over the past week and have pushed down to the lowest level since April 19th. So the seasonal downtrend in beef is already in place. Thank you. Terry Rogensack coming to you from the CME Group trading floor.
Here at the Agribusiness Desk, we have Doug Worling, Bauer Trading. Doug, let's talk about the energy markets because we've been watching oil inch higher. I think I saw $3 a gallon gas, which some places I think would call cheap, but it's not $2.15.
So here domestically, yeah, you're coming into the busy seasons, the summer months. We have seen basically crude oil stocks here domestically decline for a year, almost a year and a half now. We are transitioning away from OPEC having a big stronghold on the market, us, Russia, and Saudis are your big three players in oil now. We produce just as much as Russia and the Saudis. We have been exporting it. We have been using it. You can tell our economy, our economic growth is doing better.
Yeah.
So we're in heavy driving season. We are using gas. We are using oil products. And believe it or not, we're still exporting it too to China at this point. They have yet to slap any type of, they need energy products. So we've seen great demand growth there while supply has been reducing. And when you get those two things happening, obviously prices go up.
Yeah. So as we start to look out and manage this on farm, any advice for folks as we look toward the second half of this year?
Well, okay. Typically, once you get through these summer months, your peak heavy driving season, you tend to see usage obviously scale back. Now, that may not be the case this year, depending on how things are trucking here economically. I mean, when I drive here and it takes an extra half hour to get here because of truck traffic, that gives you a good indication of what's going on.
We're moving some stuff.
So therefore, you know, any type of dip at some point of significance would be an opportunity to be locking in prices because until we get into winter months, they're probably going to stay sustained pretty high.
Okay, well, it's something to watch. It's an interesting market to follow. Appreciate your insights. We'll be back with more Ag Day in just a minute.
For a free 2-week trial to Jim's daily global market letter, call Bauer Trading toll free at 1-800-533-8045.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman here looking at the root zone moisture map. And if we look at this map, I'm shocked by Nebraska. I mean, I can't imagine how often it's that blue, but it has improved in Missouri.
It has improved as far as the root zone moisture, and this comes directly from the satellites from NASA. And so this is showing how you compare to normal with your top soil levels. Obviously, though, the moisture is still lacking and big time in some areas from northern Missouri all the way down through much of Texas except the far southern tip, as you can see. Very dry conditions. It's always dry in the southwest corner, but these are even drier conditions than typical. But then there's those wet areas like Clinton pointed out, much of Nebraska, the western Great Lakes, Minnesota, back into the northern Rockies, and really straight down through the Ohio, Tennessee valleys into Florida as well. Let's check the situation this morning then. You can see a cool front moving through the upper Midwest. As we head through time, then that front will continue to move eastward and southward, and that will cause some showers and thunderstorms to develop pretty close to that front as we head through later on this afternoon. We kind of have a stationary front through the Florida Peninsula into the Gulf of Mexico, so that will help to provide some afternoon variety showers and thunderstorms close to the Gulf Coast and out over the Gulf. And that area of low pressure that started off in the north central Gulf is now moving into northern Mexico at this point. Now, a little bit of this moisture is probably going to eventually get drawn up into the southwest, West Texas, which will help you folks out. It would have been nicer for that low to actually get pulled up there, but not going to happen, it looks like. As we head through tonight, then that cold front will continue to push southeastward through the Ohio Valley. So by morning, we'll be looking at some showers and thunderstorms from the northeast all the way into the Ohio Valley, parts of Kentucky, southern Indiana, And you can see back to the west, that area just keeps going westward. It'll be interesting to see what happens if it goes out into the Pacific, or actually, I know some of the moisture gets pulled northward, but whether the low pressure does or not. Not a lot going on out west, as you can see on the weather map. Precipitation estimate through 7 a.m. Thursday. You can see a fair amount of it, upper Mississippi Valley, Louisiana, southeast Texas. Those areas have had the most. Adding in the next 12 hours, you can see we get some activity then, northern Missouri into the southern Great Lakes, and hit and miss through the southeast. Low temperatures this morning going to be in the 70s, as you can see, in much of the area from the Great Lakes all the way to the Gulf Coast. And the heat continues from the Ohio River Valley southward into the Gulf of Mexico, and it stays very hot in the southwest. There's a jet stream. We get this trough digging into the Great Lakes and the Northeast over the next few days to cool things down temporarily. Another trough kind of coming in as we head into next week and as the ridge slowly pushes back to the west. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. We head to Cedar City, Utah. First of all, lots of sunshine and hot, high of 94 degrees. Bemidji, Minnesota, a good deal of sunshine and comfortable, high of 75. And finally, Chattanooga, Tennessee, a mixture of clouds and sunshine, high around 90.
All right, we'll check in on the cattle industry next and later.
I'm Charles Denny. Summertime science in the garden. Kids learn horticulture and how to grow our food. That story from Stony Creek Farm in Franklin, Tennessee, coming up on Ag Day.
The National Cattlemen's Beef Association responding to Canadian tariffs on $170 million worth of U.S. beef products. Those went into effect on Sunday. Kent Bacchus, Director of International Trade and Market Access, saying, quote, "We may not know the extent of the damage these tariffs may have on our producers, but we believe that cooperation is a better path forward than escalation." Canada slapping tariffs on $12.8 billion of U.S. goods, ranging from maple syrup, pizza, to steel and aluminum. And the All-American Cookout for the 4th of July holiday week is costing less this year. According to the American Farm Bureau Federation's informal survey, the average cost of a summer cookout for 10 people, $55.07 or $5.51 per person. The cost is down less than 1% from last year. Now, competition in the meat case, well, it continues to benefit consumers through lower retail prices.
Well, our customers are looking for flexibility and variety, and so being able to offer, beef, seafood, chicken, all different kinds of protein. But I'll tell you, during the summer, we see a lot of customers doing a lot of barbecuing with beef. So you certainly see a lot of action in the meat counter, during the summer months.
AFBF's summer grilling menu price consists of hot dogs, buns, cheeseburgers, pork spare ribs, deli potato salad, baked beans, corn, chips, lemonade, chocolate milk, ketchup, mustard, and watermelon. Sounds pretty good. When we come back, life lessons from the summer garden for kids in the volunteer state.
In the country, brought to you by Kubota. See the all-new Commander Pro zero-turn mower at Kubota.com or visit your local Kubota dealer today.
So how's that summer garden looking? So many great lessons are possible during the growing season, and in Tennessee, the garden is becoming a teaching tool. In this report from UT's Institute of Agriculture, Charles Denny reports on a program where kids are encouraged to grow their own food.
Nobody ever said gardening was limited to just the over 21 crowd. A plant doesn't care how old its caretaker might be, as long as it gets water, sun, and nutrients. But before you grow a garden, you've got to dig it.
Actually, yeah. I don't like getting dirty, but I like planting stuff.
That'll work. More than 50 kids ages 6 to 12 were part of Farm to You, a junior master gardener camp in Williamson County. This day, a field trip to Franklin's Stony Creek, a teaching farm and pick-your-own operation.
I put 2 in the basket and maybe a couple, and I eat a couple.
Farm owner Leif Underberg teaches the kids to grow their own buckwheat in a cup, and later leads a tour through the gardens, where the kids learn where our food comes from, agriculture's most important lesson.
So it's exciting for us to be able to actually educate them on how to pick green beans, how to pick the right tomato, how to fry green tomatoes, all that kind of stuff we can actually do.
Organized by UT and TSU Extension, there are some 2,500 adult master gardeners in Tennessee, and many volunteer their time at events like this camp
to teach the younger ones.
The camp includes lessons about our synchronized world, how plants and animals are all connected, and that it takes work to produce food. When it comes to farming, the land must be worked and the human touch is necessary. So keep digging, kids. The earth provides our food supply. We just have to help it along. This is Charles Denny reporting.
All right, thanks, Charles, and that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. It's been part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.